Was that the real deal?
That's the real deal.
Oh, he forgot to tell us we were going to air.
Uh,
Well, in that case, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Welcome to Candid Frank live on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at your local iOS and Android device stores. Please download it and make sure you rate, leave, comment. Bazingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Join me now is Aaron William Freeland. I guess I was out of practice, Aaron.
well, when you take a little bit of time off, it's to be expected.
Well, also the problem I have is I have an audio problem, so I might have to switch my audio. I'm sitting here trying to figure out a backup plan in case my audio disappears and I don't hear you. All right, so what's new the past week in your life? I know that
Uh,
your Go Train trips, when you want a silent moment, you sit in the silent section. It's not quiet.
it's one of those. They sort of recommend that everybody be quiet in the quiet zone because everybody's nerves are frazzled after having been at work all day. The last thing you need is somebody chewing gum and talking on their phone full volume. But it's
Yeah, like they have headphones on.
yeah, exactly. Which is the funny part because most of them are. But it's like, yeah, just because you can't hear us doesn't mean we can't hear you. So
Yeah.
there's that.
So other than that, everything okay?
Yeah, everything was all right. Everything was all right. I heard our producer had a bit of an issue earlier this week, so that's that's always
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, and I had some issues too this week. I did some. I have some software issues with an editing thing. I did a couple of reports, a couple of segments, and I had problems with the software. Then I had problems with a microphone, and it's been. And then I went into the city, couldn't come back in time to do the show on Wednesday. I've been very hesitant to do anything because it turns to mush very quickly. And when I say mush, I mean mush. It turns into mush. All right. So listen, we call this one on Friday Leaf Talk because we like to be Leaf centric and talk about the Maple Leafs. And since we were here last, I'll add also to what you wanted to talk about, which was the last two games. The two before that, Detroit and Boston. Just a cursory conversation about the way they came out against Detroit, a team that really didn't have a lot of luck with the Leafs. Um, what was the overall, do you think, impact of that game? And did it change the way they played in Boston? Or was it a game that the Leafs weren't paying attention to because they were going to play Boston?
It's a combination of different factors here. When you look at that game that they played against Detroit, it was actually the second half of a back-to-back with travel. They played Nashville on the 11th. That's the Wednesday and won 2-1. Then, had a night of travel into Detroit at, 5 o'clock in the morning, playing Detroit that evening without Austin Matthews, who had a maintenance day and lost 4-1. Now, it's not as bad as it used to be. Detroit is actually a passable team this year. So, it's something that, makes the Leafs realize that they've got to pay a little more attention to these sorts of things because it's not just a gimme when you play certain teams anymore. These things change. Then, Saturday going in to play Boston, they have a little bit of a bee in their bonnet because this is the team that they're chasing and the team that they're still chasing. I believe they're 13 points back now, which is, it's not insurmountable, but it's not exactly easy either.
I think more than chasing the Bruins, they're chasing their history with the Bruins more than anything. And so they don't need to surpass them during the season. They need to develop a process or confidence in being able to beat them. And I think that's more important. I think that's what the management team with the Toronto Maple Leafs want. They want to make sure that this team plays the kind of hockey that'll reflect well in the playoffs. We know that the answer to that question always is, will they get past the first round? is a question and a fair question. But really, the question is, will they be able to play the kind of game that will lead to them winning that first series? And that truly, you can tell by some of the changes they're making, the moves that they've made. They're bringing in a little more grit, right? They're bringing in a little more, I want the puck and I'm going to go get it, as opposed to, they traded a puck possession guy for a guy that is a little more, has a bit more sandpaper, and is a guy that goes and gets the puck in a kind of different way. In other words, he doesn't go after the puck politely to go get it. So they're putting a little rude in their game, and they need that rude. And we saw it in this series of 4 games. We saw it in Boston. We saw the physicality required. It was a hint of only what was to come against Florida. Um, Aaron, isn't this the big thing that the Leafs have to do? Is they have to figure out how to play playoff hockey now and not wait to learn it during the playoffs.
Yeah, that I think has been a large issue with the Maple Leafs, is that they don't seem ready to play playoff hockey, even though everybody's been telling them it's a different kind of hockey. It's like they're not learning. Yeah, it's exactly the point that you just made. The fact that they went down and managed to beat Florida in overtime is a heartening sign on Tuesday for sure. And then winning the Stanley Cup against Winnipeg on the Thursday was an even better game. I'm pretty sure everybody remembers last year with the Winnipeg Jets talking about, hey, is there anything better than beating the Leafs, boys? I hope that they play that before every single game that Winnipeg plays Toronto, because it seems to be just the tonic. Funnily enough, they won their last game against Winnipeg 4-1 as well, and Samsonov was also in net. So,
Yeah, and
history repeats.
Samsonov I talked about this at the beginning of the year. Samsonov could end up playing the Jack Campbell version of replacing Murray when Murray was playing for Dubas in junior. I think Samsonov is going to do the same trick. I think he's going to be the guy that comes in, and Murray is going to lose his job to Samsonov like he did with Campbell, and then they won the Junior A championship. The reason I say that is that the one thing that Murray can't do, and that is he can't guarantee his health. And the Leafs have done, they bent over backwards trying to help him, in game management and his physical well-being. They've worked hard towards that. Now, is it over? Is it the decision? Have I made a decision and said, you know what, Murray can't cut it? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying, they're at a point now at this time of year, Aaron, he's going to have to establish that he can remain healthy over an extended period, because the playoffs are a grind. They're a major grind for everybody on the team, not just goaltender.
Oh no, for sure. I think a lot of people, present company excluded, a lot of people lose track of the fact that they're supposed to be a platoon. There is no real number one goalie here. It's 1A and 1B, or not even necessarily A and B. It's just they're both going to play roughly the same amount of games. What we're really hoping for here, and I think Dubas has managed to do this rather well, and based on their performance and whatnot, Keefe, I think, has also managed to keep this in mind as well, is that when one gets hot, the other is usually going cold. So you're just going to keep riding these guys until they're no longer hot. There's no real one first goalie and second goalie at this point. You're looking more at who's currently on. At this point here, Samsonov has the net, which is awesome. He's been very consistent for them. Murray may be fighting through some issues that he may not necessarily have been open about, or that the Leafs management isn't telling us about. But it isn't over for Matt by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a question now of, streaky, hot and cold, hot and cold.
In support of what you said, we also have to recall that, and keep and temper our thoughts that Samsonov cannot look back at a history of playing 60 games. He has, the most he's played is some almost 40, I think 41 or 42 in a season. So for him to play 41 and Murray play 41 this year, or somewhere in that statistic is something I know and believe the Leafs knew that going into the season. They knew they had a goaltender in Murray whose health was questionable and would very well not be able to play a lion's share of the games. So they brought in a guy that they thought could play at least half the season and had experience playing a half season and had the potential to be a really good goaltender. And I think their judgment was right with Samsonov. And yes, there's only been a couple of times this year where they've gone back to back with bad games between the two of them. It's really been rare, but it's going to happen, right? I mean, statistics are what statistics are. But again, the goaltending for the Leafs has not been the problem this year.
No.
Um, the I don't think that's been a problem. I don't think it's fair and reasonable to consider suggesting that the Leafs have any major problems. Not a team that has the record that they have. You know, if all you're going to do is look at the negative, right, and say, okay, what aren't they doing right? Well, their defense from time to time doesn't play well. They've had too many injuries. Their goaltenders had a bad night. Their forwards, like Austin Matthews, are not having career years. If one goes in that direction, it doesn't matter what team you look at, Aaron, you're going to find those issues with every team. The difference between the Leafs and many other teams this season, in fact, the lion's share of teams, is that they have less problems than most other teams. And they have results to back up what I'm saying. And sometimes we just have to look at facts and not become enamored by, hostile feelings that we've acquired in the past, and say, oh no, here we go. See, the goaltender played bad tonight. We need a new goaltender. That kind of thing. It's just silly. It's just downright silly. My thing with the Leafs is I said from the beginning of the season, I'm going to hold true to what I said. I, as a person following the Leafs, what they needed to do, and I said this at the beginning of the year, you'll remember, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter other than they make the playoffs and they make the playoffs without a struggle at the end of the season. The way things are going right now, they'll accomplish what I said. I believe that's important to set the table for them to go into the playoffs clear minded and ready, with a process that will lead to playoff hockey, which we all know, I repeat, is the only way you're going to win in the playoffs. And the game against Florida was a perfect example of what happened to them in the past couple of years, where the physical play that Montreal dealt them, Tampa dealt them, the cheap shots, the things that'll infuriate you and get you off your game were perfectly displayed in the game against the Florida Panthers. The officiating, a perfect example of what the Leafs have to overcome, as they couldn't against Tampa and they couldn't against Montreal. Bad calls got to them, and they affected the end result. Hopefully, that game in Florida is a good example of how they'll deal with what I just said, and that is end up winning. And more importantly, the most important and salient point is in a tough game like that, they came from behind and they won in overtime. Isn't that exactly what they didn't do against Tampa? Isn't that exactly what they didn't do against Montreal? And they found themselves on the outside looking in.
Yeah, when you look at how that game actually started with Matt Murray only making 4 stops on 8 shots, that's one of those unenviable situations. That was almost as bad as Peter Mrazek's performance the other night against the Avalanche, where on the first 8 shots he stopped 1. So the fact of the matter is, despite being given 7 power plays and only having 3 shorthanded opportunities, the Maple Leafs did the best to dig themselves out of that hole, and Nylander managed to play the hero. Now, some of the other fallout from all of that going on, that everything everywhere all at once BS in Florida, is Paul Maurice found himself on the wrong end of a $25,000 fine, which will be going to the NHL Foundation. When asked about the fine that he received and if he had any further comments about the referees, Maurice remarked that any further comment on the matter would be fiscally irresponsible.
Absolutely, it would. And that game, again, we're going to sound. I'm going to sound like I'm a Leaf fan. The officiating was atrocious. I just don't understand how you can cross-check a star like Austin Matthews, like was happening to him, and the third one finally led to him tripping the guy, and they went off, equally. I mean, there should have been an extra penalty to the Florida player because he basically incited the exchange. He persisted, and there should have been an arm in the air after the first cross check because that kind of cross check is illegal. It's called all the time, but then to not call it after a second time, and then decide to call it after a third time because the guy goes down, and then you call it. The low bridge hit. The hockey gods were on the Leafs side in this one. After that low bridge hit, guess what happened? The Leafs tied it and ended up winning after that. The point I'm making is I'm not sitting here saying, oh, see the officials, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying that under those circumstances, they'll find themselves under those circumstances in the playoffs because they've found themselves in those circumstances before. I believe that they need to somehow figure out how to turn the negative into a positive. But this is a team who've had a lot of experience in getting a lot of negative. So people can hate on the Leafs all they want. All I can say is that game's a perfect example of what the Leafs will have to deal with. They dealt with it against Tampa in the playoffs, the constant holding, the two penalties that weren't called on the tying goal before the overtime that ousted the Leafs out of the playoffs. Those kind of things, the Leafs are going to have to figure out a way to play that much better. It's what they have to do. The Leafs have to be a far better team than the opponent to win. It's just what they have to do. But they have the talent to do it. That's what I'm saying. They have the talent to overcome stupid officiating. They have it. They just got to do it.
So the Gung Show did continue on Thursday. I don't know if you caught that, Frank, if you got home for that. But at one point, Timothy Liljegren was tripped
yes.
by Scheifele, and he fell and in the process of falling, tripped Dubois. Now, the only player to get a penalty out of that, despite Liljegren being tripped approximately 15 feet away from a referee, was Liljegren himself, who sat up on the ice and basically looked at the ref and said, I got tripped, right? But yeah, little later, actually, in that game, he actually took a shot right off the beam, too, in front of the net there.
He sure did.
A hard rising shot and went down like a ton of bricks. He seems to be okay. The report out of the Leafs is that he's not going on LTIR. He's not even going on the injured reserve list. He did practice with them this morning. So it does appear that he is going to be good to go in that regard.
And there was a bit of a hollering match from the bench. Number 58 was giving it to in return because a certain former captain of the Winnipeg Jets was upset with the whistle because he was down on the ice after getting hit in the head.
Well, it's one of those things where I think he was complaining that the whistle was blown too quickly, and it's like, yeah, but it's a guy who's got a potential head injury who's down on the ice in front of the net. You're a piece of garbage if you think we should have kept playing. Don't read lips if you see the highlights, kids. There's a lot of words that start with the letter F in most of those sentences.
Yeah, and they weren't friendly words.
No.
Or frank. They were candid, but they weren't frank. That's for sure. Okay, let's leave this and go to the first intermission. We like to talk about politics, and I guess the first thing we can talk about is what's up with Sobeys and PC.
So, as it turns out, Loblaws is the only one who's inflating prices and chalking it up to premium. There was apparently a salad that was on sale at Sobeys. It's a party-size Caesar salad bowl that weighs approximately a pound and a half. That was actually on sale for $41.99. It's supposed to be a family-size salad. Anybody who knows
that's a big family.
Size is generally pretty giant, but yeah. So they're catching a little bit of flack for that. President's Choice is also catching a little flack for the fact that they're trying to sell maple syrup for $15 a bottle. So the saga continues. They actually did a survey and found that a lot of Canadians right now are um, doing more hunting for stuff that's expiring shortly. Well, not necessarily expiring, but reaching its best before date. Um, Now, something to bear in mind, folks, best before doesn't mean it's bad as soon as that date hits. It's just it doesn't necessarily taste maybe as good as it potentially could.
Well, it's basically a deadline for when it's at its best, and then it
Mhm.
degenerates. And not to disagree with you, but I will say this, that different things degenerate past that date faster than others, is
Yeah.
what I'll say, right?
I some things
Some
do
things
go bad faster. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So just to qualify the statement that you made and make sure that anyway, there's a recall for oh, and I wanted to say that Sobeys, the buying manager, is he running for the governorship of Ohio next time? Just kidding.
I'm not
Um
100% sure, but you know.
because that's not salad in my that's not an ordinary Canadian citizen salad, that's for sure. Okay, recall of soft and semi-soft surface ripened cheese triggered by illness outbreak. What the heck is that about?
So the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which is our version of the FDA, has issued a recall for La
The
Fromage au
FIA, yep.
Village and La Vache à Mayotte brand soft and semi-soft surface ripened cheese due to possible listeria contamination. These affected products include Angelus, Le Casimir, Le Cendre de Notre Dame, and Melodieux cheeses, which are sold in
So what are we
150,
talking?
200, and
Cottage
275.
cheese? What are we talking?
Um,
Cottage cheese?
Well, they're described as soft and semi-soft cheeses, potentially with a rind on the outside. So
Oh,
you're
okay,
looking at
okay,
stuff like
okay.
that. Now, it can be contaminated with listeria. Now, foods contaminated with listeria, for those out there who don't know, may not look or smell spoiled, but can still make you sick. This includes vomiting, nausea, persistent fever, muscle aches, severe headaches, and neck stiffness. So just be aware that if you do have anything by Le Fromage au Village or La Vache à Mayotte, just be careful.
All right. In Canada, no pharmacare bill this year would be a deal breaker, says NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. You know that they're holding the Liberals hostage, and they're saying, you know, they're the reason why the Liberals are still in power, and they're saying this has got to happen. So it's a threat, right?
Yeah, they say they want to see a national framework presented in Parliament and passed in Parliament before the end of 2023. Otherwise, they'll consider reneging on their supply and confidence agreement, which they signed with the Liberals in March of 2022, that is supposed to last until 2025 or the next election. Um, they the agreement that they have stipulates that a pharmacare bill has to be tabled by the end of 2023, and that a national drug agency should be tasked to develop a national formulary of essential medicines and a bulk purchasing plan by the end of said agreement. So they've
Ex-reform
said, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We're moving on. Ex-reform leader Preston Manning picked to chair review of Alberta's COVID response.
So, in light of the fact that they seem to have been receiving failing grades from most people when it comes to their COVID response, Premier Danielle Smith has struck a committee to investigate how the Alberta government responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. I have a feeling this is going to be part fact finding and part blame assignation, in particular looking to further tar and feather the former Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney. We'll have to see how that works for them.
Yeah, post-analyzation always ends up anyway. Newfoundland, Atlantic Canada braces for incoming winter storm. We're talking 30 plus centimeters of snow, Aaron. Yikes.
Yeah, they're talking about 10 to 15 centimeters throughout the day today, as well as heavier totals in Yarmouth, where you could expect an additional 15 to 20 centimeters on top of that. St. John's itself, as well as Marystown, is looking at anywhere from 15 to 40 centimeters. This could particularly be an issue, especially for older folk living in St. John's, because the EMS and ambulance drivers have actually gone on strike in St. John's, Newfoundland recently over their contract. So the fallout from this could be a lot larger than people would initially think.
Many are accusing the Ontario Premier, Doug Ford, of privatizing Ontario healthcare. by underfunding it.
Well, it does seem to me that private for pay clinics seem to be getting bigger and bigger roles, especially when it comes to helping lessen wait times for surgeries in the province, especially when it comes to diagnostic imaging, and not mention colonoscopies and endoscopies. Um, these procedures, which are generally considered non-urgent, low risk, and minimally invasive, have been far out on a more consistent private clinics. And as a result of this, this is also ironic. They have apparently not been spending all of the money that the federal government has been sending them, but at the same time asking for more money. So I'm not sure where all that federal funding is going once it hits the provincial coffers, but it doesn't seem like we're getting full value from our dollars out of the Ontario public system. So
Let's move on to CFL. Let's talk about the Lions and the trio of Americans they added to their roster.
So at the tail end of last season, they had a few people on the roster. Now, the BC Lions have actually now signed wide receivers Jared Smart and Justice Murphy, and defensive back Christian Uphoff. They announced this. Now, this is from Tuesday. Smart was recently at a mini camp with the Arizona Cardinals. Murphy, who's from Vancouver, Washington, transferred to Western Oregon for 2019 and 2021. And Uphoff signed with the Green Bay Packers as a non-drafted free agent in 2021.
The Elks signed 2 nationals.
Give me just a second here, Frank. I seem to be having a bit of an issue. There we go.
Wide receiver Danny Vandervoot, 1. You okay?
I appear to be frozen.
Yeah, but we can hear you just fine.
That's the problem. Everything is on my computer is currently frozen.
So oh no. Okay. Well, here I'll just the Ticats add some depth with Herzog Roundtree. Bombers extend Jackson. You wanna reboot and come back?
Yeah,
we have time to do that. Oh, we don't. Yeah, we have time to do that. We're here till 10-2.
Yeah, we got a second. I'll be right back.
Go ahead and do that. All right, and the Bombers extend Jackson Jeffcoat. The Red Blacks extend Jeremiah Mazzoli through 2024. That is in their hope. They have their new head coach, and now they have their starting quarterback. Jeremiah Mazzoli, as you all know, didn't make it out of the first couple of games of the season, was injured, and I and many other people feel the Red Black season at that point really became difficult, and it was difficult for them to overcome that loss. There just aren't enough starting quarterbacks available in the Canadian Football League. It's something that I've talked about endlessly, so I won't continue now. The Riders add American Rodney Clemens, and good for him. And then I wanted to also to talk about Brooke Henderson. She has a 4-shot lead right now in the LPGA Tour opener. I'm telling you, this gal doesn't get enough attention, and I got to tell you, we're guilty of not paying enough attention to her. At the Hilton Grand right now, she has an opportunity to, win the first championship. This young lady has, since she's been on the golf tour, the LPGA, she's been outstanding, and she's a Canadian that I think from at times has gotten the kind of attention that she deserves, but at other times it seems she just hasn't. And we'll see if she gets the kind of attention after hopefully winning this, knock on wood, the Vacations Tournament of Champions. We'll see what happens after that. In Tennis Canada, Ogier Agelassim digs deep with a major comeback at the Aussie Open. Another great Canadian that is in a sport where many Canadians are succeeding. So, the depth of the field of tennis players in Canada is nothing but, I mean, you can't help but be proud of Tennis Canada and the job they're doing, and the Canadians who are picking up the game of tennis. We'll see what happens well as seen at the Aussie Open. Hopefully it'll be something that'll be really good. We've had a lot of opportunities. We've had a lot of disappointments, and this is what happens with Tennis Canada and the players that they have. So many are on the cusp, and some, as we've witnessed, have gone past the cusp and won some championships. The men, not so much as the women, but we do have a couple of men that can, if things break their way, they could have themselves maybe a championship. We've had injuries be an issue with Canadian men's tennis players, and that's something that's a disappointment. But there's nothing you can do organizationally to protect yourself against that. Let's move on to the Maple Leafs, and hopefully Aaron will be back soon. The Leafs and the Habs will be playing, and well, if there's a tough stretch for the Leafs, these next 4 games are very tough. They always have a hard time against the Montreal Canadiens, especially when they're below them in the standings. The New York Islanders, not as much difficulty for the Leafs today as it has been in the past. Call him, Aaron. Here, I just got to type a message, Aaron. There, call Eduardo. Aaron's waiting I can't bring him in, so he's waiting there. We'll see if Eduardo gets the call. The Canadians, the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Senators, all teams that the Leafs have had trouble with. This could be a dangerous time for the Leafs. We'll see how they can handle, as I said, to pick up where I left off with the Islanders, a team that the Leafs for a time had difficulty beating. Their captain, of course, was the lightning rod for the, let's say, the momentum developed on behalf of the Islanders. But recently, the losses the Leafs incurred against the Islanders, I think, helped them to right the ship. We'll see how it stands now. I was just talking, Aaron, about the next 4 games that the Leafs will be coming in. I'm calling it a really tough stretch. The Canadians, the Islanders, Rangers, and Senators. The Canadians and Senators have always given the Leaf fits. The Islanders used to, not so much in recent memory. And the Rangers, as you know, they look like world beaters when they play the Leafs.
Yeah, for some reason, some teams just seem to have our number. But Montreal is, despite their position in the standings, is never going to be a pushover. They've always played them tough. The genius that is Lou Lamoriello, who has taken over for the New York Islanders, that team has been languishing and suffering as of late. I would not be all that surprised were they to have at least a breakout game. The New York Rangers are one of those teams that are an enigma. At times they can be world beaters, like you've mentioned. Other times they can be downright human. And Ottawa is one of those, what I like to call a trap game. So, there's always that possibility that they could jump up and bite the Leafs. You never, ever know. There's nothing to be taken for granted over the next little while. The Leafs are going to be getting a bit of home cooking.
Yeah, they're they're a homestand stretch right now. They're going to be playing a lot of games at home. And they're going to have to make hay here. It matters. And also, this is a good stretch of 4 games. It's a good challenge for them because they're all teams that are not the best teams in the league, but they're the kind of average and below average teams that will test the Leafs' ability to focus on their game and not let it slip. So we're going to find out how well the coach can prepare these players, not with skill, but the mental side of the game here in this 4-game stretch is going to be the key for the Leafs. They got to play smart hockey, and they've got to figure out what it takes to win, not who they're playing, just what it takes to win. And it's hard. It's a distraction when teams come in that aren't doing well, and then they come into Toronto again. Toronto does attract a lot of great games from players, especially Canadian players who come in to play in Toronto. It's the big picture for them. They love it. And that's another thing the Leafs are up against when it comes to teams that aren't playing well. Individuals have an opportunity to rise up.
Yeah, it's the desire to play well in your hometown in front of your friends and
that
family.
Winnipeg thing. That Winnipeg thing.
That Winnipeg thing.
Tell us about the Montreal Canadiens and some of the injuries they have.
It has not been very much fun for the Montreal Canadiens at this point. There have been a whole host of players that have gone down recently. Armia is one of them. Uri Slavkovsky has been put on the injured list. Jake Evans is out. On the flip side, Nick Robertson has had season-ending shoulder surgery, so he's done for the next 6 months. And defensive call-up Mac Hollowell actually had surgery on a fractured kneecap, so he's out for the next 8 to 12 weeks at minimum. So it's unfortunate that both teams are dealing with the injuries that they are. TJ Brody again is still out with the injured ribs. Timothy Liljegren did skate this morning, but he's still a game time decision. So it's everybody's suffering at this point. It's right at that sweet spot in the season where everybody who isn't going to the All-Star break is thanking the gods that they're not an All-Star. They have a couple days off in order to try to rest and recuperate a little bit.
I think we who follow the Maple Leafs and the fans and the media and anybody who follows the Maple Leafs have learned a very important lesson this year. It really sucks when you have injuries, but the upside is it sure helps in identifying the kind of depth you have.
Oh, for sure. Just the ability to stand back and assess exactly what's happening is a boon. How you get to that situation is never fun, but
No. Let's talk about the Senators. Oh, sorry. You want to finish something?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. Brady Tkachuk scores in overtime, helps the Senators beat the Penguins.
So he scored 25 seconds into the overtime on Wednesday. DeBrincat, Stutzla, Batherson, and Pinto also scored for Ottawa, who are now 20, 21, and 3. They were 4 for 9 on the power play. Cam Talbot stopped 16 of 20 shots. So not a great night between the pipes for him, but still enough to get a win. Evgeny Malkin on the flip side had a goal and 2 assists for Pittsburgh, and Crosby had 3 assists. Zucker, Friedman, and Raquel also scored, and Casey DeSmith made 35 saves on 40 shots.
Matthew Joseph scratched from the game. What can you tell us about what happened there?
So the anticipation was that he would be playing his brother Jean-Philippe in that particular game. Unfortunately, what happened was apparently an internal team matter. He spoke about that, saying that it was an internal thing. I made a mistake and I'm ready to assume the consequences of it. This is on me and it's my responsibility. I know it can be better and I will. This points to somebody oversleeping, missing the start of practice, that sort of thing. And again, it's an internal issue, so we may never actually know what it was. But as far as they're concerned, Joseph will be playing the second half, so he will be playing against his brother, just this time in Pittsburgh, not in Ottawa.
Yeah, this is we all remember Nylander getting a little bit into hot water under the same kind of situation.
And Kadri and Kapanen and a whole bunch of others.
Absolutely, it happens with young players. Yeah, it happens. Let's talk about the Flames and Lehkonen and Rantanen, 2-goal efforts.
Yeah, the Flames found themselves on the wrong side of it. They were wearing their Blasty jerseys again. But Cale Makar also wasn't playing. Rantanen and Lehkonen scored 2 goals each. Calgary was just looking at it like the goals are going to come eventually. We're going to have to start scoring. Whether by accident or by design, eventually it's going to happen. Coach Daryl Sutter said, I think that we Flames were as ready as we could be. They are the champions. They had 13 guys in their lineup that won the Stanley Cup last year. We had 1. That, of course, would be Kadri. Big difference. We're still very much in the show me stage at this point. So Sutter does acknowledge that Calgary has been having issues, especially with their revamped lineup. It still sounds a little bit, though, like he's making excuses because, hey, they were the Stanley Cup champions. They should beat us. Which definitely isn't the case this year. The Avalanche have been good, but they haven't been that good. I'm just wondering how long it is before, like Boudreau in Vancouver, Calgary starts trying to shuffle him towards the door without him noticing.
Yeah, it's been an interesting, we also have the Oilers, Hyman led Oilers, and they extend their win streak to 5 games.
Yeah, this was a really good game. Zach had 2 goals. McLeod and Draisaitl also scored for the Oilers. And Connor McDavid also had a goal and an assist. Now, this begs the question, with only 1 goal and 1 assist as compared to Zach Hyman's 2 goals, is Connor McDavid washed? Is it about time that the Oilers consider maybe moving him for assets that could potentially be more consistent at the trade deadline?
Stamkos hits major milestone.
I thought it was funny, Frank.
It is funny.
Stamkos scored his 500th goal against the Vancouver Canucks as they won 5-3 on Wednesday. Again, this is one of those things. Steven Stamkos got his goal, his 500th regular season goal, I should point out, at 4:40 of the first period. This is one of those things where you're happy for him, but at the same time, you're kind of sad. Spencer Martin allowed 4 goals on 10 shots for Vancouver before being pulled. He was replaced by Colin Delia, who made 14 saves in relief. Consistent rumblings, despite how well Bo Horvat has been playing recently, about the
And he's going.
of Horvat going. Not only that, but Bruce Boudreau also going.
Yeah, and he knows that people are talking about it. He's not
Yeah.
deaf. Yeah, that's Vancouver's situation is a tough one. We always talk about the fact that successful teams and teams that aren't as successful, the difference between them is not that much. It's just unfortunate because their weakness is exposed by the opposition, and it gives them a hard time to play well. I also wanted to talk about, you talked about Austin Matthews, about the All-Star additions. There was some debate whether it should be Nylander or Matthews. Ended up being Matthews. Do you think that's reputation over play a little bit?
Not necessarily. I know that there was a large groundswell of support on Twitter for Nylander amongst Leafs fans. They're posting using the hashtag All-Star vote. But the other thing that you have to remember is you also have to go onto their website to vote as well. So while a lot of people thought that they were doing something by tweeting about it, they may not necessarily have gotten onto the website to vote as well. Now, there are conspiracy theorists out there who are saying that, oh no, Nylander was never going to get into that game because he already has a bad reputation for being a holdout on the Maple Leafs and asking for more money than he thinks he's worth and all this other happy crappy. But as far as I'm concerned here, the All-Star game is the All-Star game. Matthews is a more bankable name than Nylander at this point.
I think that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. It's Nylander's not on the NHL game. Austin Matthews is.
Yeah.
You got to
He's
have
been
him
on the cover.
You can't not have him at the game. I'm sure the people at the game are going, we're getting a choice between Nylander and Matthews. Have you seen the cover of our game? Please. Thank you very much.
It's also going to be Austin Matthews' 5th appearance at the All-Star game.
Yeah,
so
every season, right? Every season in his career. I don't know how many players can make that claim. I doubt anybody outside of, I'm thinking, I'm trying to remember. Mario Lemieux, did he, from his first year, did he make the All-Star? I think Gretzky did. Pretty sure Gretzky did. We got the new kid from the kid. I'm trying to think. I think he's been in every All-Star game that since he's been in the league.
Pretty much, yeah.
There aren't that many players, maybe a dozen players that their whole career they made the All-Star game, and I won't count the ones that when they got older. I think that's not fair. Like there may be some that didn't make it when they got older, but I mean the beginning of their career. But then again, the list gets shorter if you go their whole career being in the All-Star game. And we've seen a lot of players that later aren't as good as they used to be and don't make the All-Star game. But that doesn't Sid's not one of those players. He's been excellent every year. He's had injuries. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's actually some nice players that have been there 5 or more times. Matthews obviously is one. You're also looking at Nathan McKinnon has been there 5 times. Sidney Crosby's been there 5. Johnny Gaudreau has been there 7. Alex Ovechkin has been 8 times. Then you switch over to the Atlantic Division. sorry, the Pacific Division, and Connor McDavid has been 6. Eric Carlson has been 7 times, and that's about the end of it. But yeah,
Yeah, and Connor McDavid's been in the league 1 year more than Austin Matthews,
yeah,
which would explain the 5 versus 6.
yes,
So Connor McDavid's been in every year.
yeah.
To answer the question, another player that's been in there all the time. As far as the All Star Game is concerned, Aaron, we've got a couple of minutes to talk about it. My recollection of last year's, they made a lot of it. It was in Vegas, and there were a lot of interesting things happened, and also, you know, the backdrop that was Vegas, they capitalized on Vegas, the backdrop, the fountain, the pomp and circumstance that exists in Vegas, the buildings that are there, the iconic places, that kind of thing. It's now going to be in Florida, in Miami. So it's going to be another one of those things where they can do a lot of stuff outdoors. But Miami doesn't have the same kind of, I'm going to say, recognizable things to have the events, or am I wrong about that?
I mean, really, about the only thing that they've got going for it would be probably the beaches.
And
Now,
orange patches.
well, that too. As it turns out, for the 2023 Honda NHL All Star Weekend, festivities are going to start off with a transformed Fort Lauderdale Beach Park. This is going to be for the Truly Hard Seltzer NHL All Star Beach Festival from February
Oh,
2nd to 4th. It's a non-ticketed fan festival open to the
ooh.
public, providing 3 days of family-friendly hockey interactive games and attractions. This is under the NHL's new United by Hockey Mobile Museum. Special appearances from current NHL All-Stars and NHL alumni, trophy and memorabilia displays, and a chance to take a picture with the greatest trophy in sports, the Stanley Cup. You can also buy all sorts of merchandise there, as one would expect from an event such as this. And it's going to be Thursday noon to 8, Friday 10 to 6, and Saturday 10 to 6. C1100 Seabreeze Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale for those of you who are down there. There's also going to be the Truly Hard Seltzer NHL All-Star Beach Festival Mascot Showdown. So there's going to be the debut of Kraken's new mascot, Bowie, and they're going to be showcasing their hockey skills and athletic prowess in 3 days of friendly but fierce competition. So they have a few things planned. Not to mention Fall Out Boy will be performing. Apparently they're still around, and haven't heard a lot about some of the events that they're going to be tying together for the skills competition. But we'll see as the days get closer.
Absolutely. It should be a lot of fun, something that'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, well, we haven't spoken about that other football league, the NFL. Um, the Buffalo Bills almost coughed up a game. Have you followed any of the NFL games, and what's your view on what's going on there?
I've been trying to. There's a lot of good games that are coming up this weekend that I'm interested in checking out. I'm not normally a big fan of the regular season, just because that style of football really isn't my thing. But looking at what they've got coming up for the divisional round, looks to be rather entertaining. We've got Jacksonville versus KC, the New York Giants versus Philly, Cincinnati versus Buffalo, and Dallas versus San Fran. So that is going to be some interesting TV watching for sure. I'm not sure who you've got in any of those games, and I'm not a good enough handicapper to posit a guess myself. But
Well, Buffalo's going to be in tough.
mm,
If one uses the example of what happened to them this past weekend, they couldn't beat handily a third string quarterback. They had a lot of problems, but they were playing a team that knows them really well. Miami has played them a lot. They know each other really well, so the separation's a little harder to develop, and also the first game of the playoffs. I think that was probably the worst game that we'll see from Buffalo. I think the game we'll see against, um, you know, the Bengals, I think will be a much better game. I truly, truly, truly hope that Buffalo does well. Again, this is my local team thing. Um, But growing up as a kid, I was a big Cowboys fan. Um, and then, of course, there's the team that I pulled for the last 4 years, the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was before they had their quarterback. I like the way they play historically. I have memories of them and the Oakland Raiders. Some of the most interesting games. They're a team with a great history that maybe doesn't get given enough credit for the history that they have. I like to think the Chiefs will take them. I'm hoping the Bills take the Bengals. The Cowboys and the 49ers. That's a game that to me is going to be a toss up. um, it's all going to depend on whether Dak Prescott can continue his good trend. He's been playing really well, Aaron, recently. He's on a good run, and if he can continue that run in San Francisco and deal with a team that is stronger than their quarterback. Jones is a great quarterback, but he's not. He's not a Hall of Famer just yet. And then, of course, you've got the Giants, who the last time they won a Super Bowl had the kind of season they're having now and the kind of playoff they're having now. They play up to the level of their opponent, and the Eagles have a history of not playing well in the playoffs. So in this one, I know that our friend with the Argos is a big Eagles fan, but I think the Giants are going to take this one. So I'm going Giants, Chiefs, Bills, and Cowboys.
Excellent. And I'm going Jags, Giants, Bengals, and 49ers. So we'll have to
There you
see how
go.
that turns out at the end of the weekend.
It should be really interesting. Aaron, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Frank.
And thanks for doing the part in the NFL. It wasn't really planned, but there you go. We got her done.
My pleasure.
For Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching our show today. You can follow us on. Oh my goodness, my computer's just done what the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it. Thanks for watching, everybody.